Bracing for more trouble. Fear of more violence as Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood plans for protests after Friday prayers. We have comprehensive coverage with the latest details on the situation in Egypt, the international response to the crisis, and analysis on the way forward. Welcome to Africa Live on CCTV News with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. Also ahead in the next 30 minutes. ANC boycotts commemorations as South Africa marks the first anniversary of the Marikana massacre. And a golden performance. Kenyan athletes lead Africa's medal haul at the World Championships in Moscow. Well, as the international community continues to speak out in condemnation of the violence in Egypt, which left over 600 people dead and many more injured, Egypt's presidency says the accusations, especially from the U.S. President Barack Obama, are not based on facts. And this comes as thousands of people across the Arab world continue to protest against the violence used by the army. CCTV's Maria Galang tells us more.
The UN Security Council on Thursday held closed-door consultations on the crisis in Egypt, one day after a deadly crackdown by security forces that left nearly 600 people dead. Earlier Thursday, Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan called for an urgent Security Council meeting, criticizing the silence of the global community in the face of the bloodshed.
The members, first of all, expressed their sympathy to the victims and regretted the loss of lives. The view of Council members is that it's important to end violence in Egypt, that the parties exercise maximum restraint, and there was a common desire on the need to stop violence and to advance national reconciliation.
U.S. President Barack Obama announced that the U.S. has cancelled military exercises with Egypt to protest the killing of hundreds of protesters. Obama urged Egypt's army-installed authorities to lift a state of emergency and allow peaceful protests, but stopped short of suspending $1.3 billion in annual military aid.
America cannot determine the future of Egypt. That's a task for the Egyptian people. We don't take sides with any particular party or political figure. I know it's tempting inside of Egypt to blame the United States or the West or some other outside actor for what's gone wrong.
But Egypt's government says Obama's accusations are encouraging bloodshed, also accusing the international media of twisting the situation.
Everybody in the media, they describe the sighting in Rabaa al-Adawiyya and in Nahda that it is a peaceful protest. I totally disagree with him. It's not peaceful. And we'll put some footage here. It shows it's not that peaceful and innocent like it's covered.
As a back and forth of words and accusations continues between Egyptian authorities and various world leaders, on the streets of Egypt, hundreds bury their loved ones.
If they wanted to remove them from a place, there were a number of other ways to do it. They could use water, the tear gas, but live bullets. They want us, the Egyptian people, to kill each other.
And protests for peace and stability continue to spread across the Arab world, as majority of Egyptians hope for peace following Friday's prayers. Maria Galang, CCTV.
While Egypt is bracing for more violent protests today, supporters of ousted President Mohamed Morsi have called for a, quote, Friday of anger. Now, this follows the week's crackdown on their camps, which left more than 600 people dead. Adel Mahroui has more.
The curfew is over for now, but troops are still on the street, and they're authorized to shoot to kill. All entrances to Tahrir Square and the Egyptian radio and television building will be blocked for the next 24 hours to prevent protesters from coming here.
لازم يكون موجودين.
Security forces must be in the streets. If they're not there, we see destruction and attacks on police stations. Why would they do that? The police station in our district was set on fire. I can't go out at night. My wife was ill. We had to deal with it at home.
The Muslim Brotherhood called for rallies in 28 squares in Cairo alone, and many fear further bloodshed.
We wish that no blood is shed. In Islam, this is something big. It's wrong whether it's a protester or a policeman. This is not right. We are going through hardships, but I'm sure that at the end, the best will be achieved for Egypt.
Under the state of emergency, security forces are authorized to shoot in self-defense or anyone attacking a government building. The Interior Ministry has warned to stay close to home during the Friday prayers and to stay away from windows and balconies. Some extremist Islamic movements have declared a state of jihad. Other Egyptians are planning to take the streets to protect their homes. And it seems that Egypt is on the verge of civil war. Adel Mahroui, CCTV, Cairo.
Well, let's now cross over to Cairo and to CCTV's Yasser Hakim, who's joining us live from there. Yasser, thank you very much. Now, the Muslim Brotherhood has called for a day of anger. What is the atmosphere like in Cairo at the moment?
It's what you can call cautious, but a bit fear of violence coming ahead in the next hour. You know, every time there are calls for mass protests, they start on Friday after the Friday prayers. The Friday prayers will begin in like 5 minutes, and after this, people expect the Muslim Brotherhood supporters to be in the streets across the country. Already there are a lot of security personnel and tanks deployed in many areas of Cairo and other cities as well, especially to protect the public and private facilities, and also in the main roads. A lot of checkpoints being deployed around the country. Even below our building here, there are 5 tanks that had just been deployed 5 minutes ago, just in this street alone. So there is a feeling of caution and also of fear of the worst coming up.
Well, Yasser, you talk about tanks being deployed in other cities, in Cairo and other cities, to protect public places there, though. But are there protests spreading in other cities like Alexandria?
There has been violent clashes throughout the night. There have been attacks on police stations in Alexandria, in North and Upper Egypt, in Al Arish, Marsa Matruh, with bombs and also hand grenades. And there was an attack on a police on a bus taking policemen to work. 19 were injured. It was a busy night, not even during the day. As an hour ago, there was an explosion at a railway line that connects Alexandria with Marsa Matruh, and this led to the halt of railway throughout both cities. And also there was a torching of the judicial club in Alexandria as well. No injuries yet been reported, mainly because it's a Friday, it's an off day, and many people did not go down to the streets. So already there are skirmishes beginning in some areas around Egypt, not just in Cairo.
All right. Yes, the international community, the world is watching Egypt very closely at this moment, and international pressure is piling on the government to try and resolve this political stalemate. Are there other international initiatives in a bid, for instance, to try and end the political stalemate there?
At this point, the message coming up from the government, I guess, is that it's too late for initiatives. The government says it has waited too long, where it welcomed envoys from the European Union, from the US, from Africa, to try to mediate, and the government blames the Muslim Brotherhood for the failure of these mediation efforts. Now it is dealing with the leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood as terrorists, because they as the government claims, have been instigating violence, whether during the sit-in or afterwards, with the increasing number of killings, especially of special forces, of police forces and the military, and attacks on public installations and official buildings. So the government is also relying on the public opinion rather than the international opinion.
All right.
It relies on the backing that it got from the millions who went down to the streets on the 30th of June and the 26th of July. So no room for discussions now or talks or peace negotiations at this point.
All right. Yasser Hakim joining us there live from Cairo. Thank you very much. He's following all the developments there for us in Egypt. Well, do stay with us here on Africa Live, as we still have more news, views and analysis for you coming up. We follow the latest trends in global politics, economics, culture and sport, and how Africa fits into the global picture. You decide what's important.
We need fair trade and justice. Africa's future will be determined by Africa.
For women's equal opportunity, for a better life.
We have to change something, and it's not the outsiders.
Talk Africa, a new voice for the world. The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has congratulated Ibrahim Boubacar Keita for winning the just concluded presidential runoff election. Now, both ECOWAS and the African Union, as well as other international observer groups, hailed the election, describing it as a peaceful, transparent and credible. Mali was often cited as a model of stable democracy in West Africa before the overthrow of President Amadou Toumani Touré, which analysts say cleared the way for Islamic militants to seize control of some of the northern parts of the country. Now, tensions remain high in parts of the north where Islamic militants had been in control. However, the peaceful elections have been seen as a first step in restoring international confidence in Mali's drive towards strengthening democracy.
ECOWAS will keep an eye on peace process in Mali. We urge all Malian communities to continue to be an example to the world. The ECOWAS Commission has already established a roadmap and it is being implemented. The roadmap is not restricted merely to the elections, but it also includes the support and the guidance to all ECOWAS unstable countries. ECOWAS Parliament will have an extraordinary meeting in September in Abuja, and Mali's case will be on the agenda.
A total breakdown in law and order. That is how the United Nations Security Council characterized the Central African Republic after a dispiriting briefing from top UN officials. The United Nations top envoy to the Central African Republic said the country could descend into chaos, and the UN's top humanitarian official warned it could become a failed state. Our correspondent at the United Nations, Stephen Fee, filed this report.
At the UN Security Council, grave warnings about the CAR's rapidly deteriorating security and humanitarian situation.
As there is no proper chain of command, the country runs the risk of descending into anarchy and chaos. Some police officers are reporting to work, but are not equipped to work safely and effectively.
Valerie Amos, the UN's chief humanitarian official, says 1.6 million people in the CAR need help, as recent fighting has brought even the most basic services to a standstill.
Much more international support is required to meet growing needs. Critical sectors such as water, sanitation and hygiene have received less than 10% of the funding required.
Seleka rebels ousted the CAR's president in March. UN officials say 200,000 people have fled their homes amid the chaos, challenging relief efforts and potentially destabilizing the region.
Briefings at the UN are the first since the May establishment of an African Union peacekeeping force, charged with protecting civilians and restoring some semblance of public order. But the emergency in the CAR continues to compound. Aid agency Save the Children says more than 100,000 kids are at high risk for sexual abuse, disease, and recruitment by armed groups.
We also need to see an end to impunity, an end to human rights violations, and a clear roadmap in terms of the return to political stability in the Central African Republic.
After briefing the council, Amos Ngay spoke to reporters.
All the council members were on the same line, that we are close to being a failed state and we should absolutely take action. And one of the actions is to provide support to this African force. And after an assessment, if this is not enough, we'll probably return before the council and report on that.
The first AU technical assessment mission is set to begin its work next week. Stephen Fee, CCTV at the United Nations in New York.
The decision by Médecins Sans Frontières to pull out of Somalia has raised fears about the provision of medical care in the country. The medical charity has worked there for 22 years, and hundreds of thousands of people relied on the MSF for basic health care.
The government in Mogadishu is trying to portray Somalia as a country in recovery. So MSF's withdrawal now is a serious blow. The medical charity has lost 16 staff in its time here and suffered frequent attacks, and it says it's hard enough. MSF blames what it calls extreme attacks on its staff by armed groups, but also says civilian leaders tolerated, even supported the killing, assaulting and kidnapping. It also cites the recent release of a man convicted of having killed an MSF staffer in Mogadishu in December 2011. There's been no response from the government to MSF's withdrawal, but many people will be affected. MSF provided free services including surgery, malnutrition treatment and maternal health care. Many Somalis could struggle to find alternative care.
They'll be forced to pay medical attention, which is something most of them cannot even afford. Most of our patients were people living in the camps.
This hospital in Mogadishu is already buckling under the strain.
MSF closure of its operations will affect us so much. We have already received more patients over the last 2 days. This is the biggest referral hospital in Mogadishu. We operate on our own with no budget from the government, and we are afraid we might not be able to handle all the cases MSF treated.
MSF had more than 1,500 staff members stationed in Somalia. The pullout will also affect semi-autonomous Puntland and the breakaway Republic of Somaliland. Mohamed Irmogi, CCTV, Mogadishu.
Well, let's return briefly to the north of Africa, where further protests are expected in the Tunisian capital, Tunis, after Friday prayers. There are two feuding camps with deep divisions over the balance to be struck between secularism and democracy following the 2011 overthrow of veteran strongman Zine El Abidine Ben Ali. The main secular opposition is accusing the moderate Islamist Ennahda party that leads the government of eroding women's rights and of failing to take strong enough action against hardline Islamists accused of murdering two prominent secular politicians this year. Ennahda insists it has the right to lead the government after emerging as the largest party in an October 2011 election for a constituent assembly, but has called on its opponents to join a broader governing coalition. Let's now cross over to Tunis for the latest from there, and we're joined by CCTV's Rowie Rattenberg from Tunis. Rowie, can you give us an update of what is going on there? What is the situation like in Tunis?
Yes, well, for now, things appear to be quite calm, Beatrice, but the ruling party here, Ennahda, that moderate Islamist party that you're talking about, we spoke with them on Thursday, and they said they have not called for protests, but we are expecting, because people here have been closely monitoring and angry by what happened in Egypt, particularly members of the Muslim Brotherhood and more Islamist members of society, we do expect some to take to the streets in anger following Friday prayers, which are due to begin here in about an hour. We also understand that the German foreign minister is concluding his visit here. He said, speaking with various members of Tunisia's governing body, that Tunisia should not become another Egypt. We understand that he met with several different parties, including the opposition. He did not meet with members of the Popular Front, and those two politicians that were assassinated, one in July and one in February, they were from that party, which is considered the third biggest party here. So it's unclear why he didn't meet with them. He was not here on a specific arbitration mission of sorts, but he did try to instill some sort of optimism at resolving this problem, which is basically the government refuses to hold to dissolve the National Constituent Assembly, and the opposition here wants to see resignations and a technocrat government appointed in the interim.
All right, Robbie Rottenberg joining us there from Tunis. Thank you very much for your update. We'll take a short break here on Africa Live, but still ahead on the program. ANC boycotts commemorations as South Africa marks the first anniversary of the Marikana massacre. South Africa is marking the first anniversary of what has come to be called the Marikana massacre, when 34 miners were shot dead by police at the mine northwest of Johannesburg. Commemorations are planned today as the country struggles to instill order in the sector and deal with widespread poverty among the miners. But the country's ruling party, the African National Congress, says organizers have politicized the event. Here is CCTV's Guy Henderson with an update from the mine.
Now, as many thousands of mine workers gather here in Marikana to mark 1 year since police shot dead 34 miners, still some controversy surrounding this event. The Association of Mine Workers and Construction insists that they did want to make this event inclusive and that they did invite the NUN to it. But the National Union of Mine Workers is not buying that. Mainly, they say, because of an agreement reached on Wednesday between AMCU and Lonmin Platinum, not far behind me, which gave AMCU majority status at this mine and took away many of the rights that minority unions had in the past. So they say that that goes completely against the spirit of unity that all unions were supposed to have signed up to after those tragic events of last year, and for that reason they say they are not signing on and attending this event. Now, since last year, this area has remained a hotbed of the divisions that still exist between these rival unions. Today is supposed to commemorate the dead, but also does once again expose the fact that those divisions still remain. Guy Henderson, CCTV, Marikana, South Africa.
Well, let's now take a look at how the markets performed across the continent in early morning trade. Nigeria's all-share index was pretty much flat, while the Johannesburg Stock Exchange in South Africa added 0.68%. The Nairobi 20-share index was posted 0.27% stronger, while the EGX in Cairo was closed.